Hey, what's up, people? Hope you're doing fine. I hope life is good wherever you are. My name is Pepe Cuenca. I am a Spanish Grandmaster, and this time I say hello from Mexico, from Cancun. But I couldn't resist the opportunity to present you one of the best finishes I ever witnessed in recent Elite Chess tournaments. And I'm talking about the game between Xiong and Wesley So in round number 9 of the US Championship. Xiong is one of the superstars, young superstars from the States, very close to 2700, and Wesley So just 15 points, less than 50 points behind Magnus Carlsen, just doing like this to Magnus's back, just come with daddy. But of course, Wesley So, as I'm telling you, one of the best chess players in the world. And yeah, so I'm gonna cut the bullshit. Basically, I'm gonna start talking about what happened in the 64 squares in the US Championship round number 9 between Xiong and Wesley So. So Jeffrey decides to open with d4. Wesley replies with knight f6, c4, and e6. And at this point, Jeffrey invites Wesley So to enter in the Catalan opening with g3, right? So as you know, at this point, White can play knight c3, and Black normally could play, for example, the Nimzo India, as elite players are doing these days, or for example d5 and knight f3, bishop e7, and these lines with bishop f4 or bishop g5, right? But g3, Jeffrey invites Wesley So to enter in the Catalan opening, and Wesley does it by playing d5, as you know. At this point, after g3, Black could also try to play c5 or bishop e4 check, right? But d5, and we are entering in the Catalan. After bishop g2, Black has several options at his disposal. For example, can play bishop b4 check, and after bishop b2, Black normally retreats this bishop to d6 or to e7, for example. What could ask Pepe? Black is losing a tempo with giving this bishop to b4, because now White has developed a piece to d2 and cap move now. So the idea is that I've told this several times, but the ideal square for the knight in the Catalan is d2, because you defend c4 and you prepare the e4 advance that is actually pretty standard in this types of position, gaining some space in the center. And so therefore, White needs to relocate this bishop, for example, in f4, in order to give this ideal square for the knight. So it's actually, this bishop b4 check is actually pretty interesting idea, and it has been employed by several top grandmasters. So, by the way, I think Jan is in Thailand, right? Jan is in Thailand playing the Bangkok Open, so wish best of luck to Jan. So right, so after bishop g2, bishop e7, this is another pretty normal move, and this is what was played in the game by Wesley So. Knight f3, short castle, and again, different options for Black. Black could play c6 in the old-fashioned way. After queen c2, knight bd7. White's idea just to play knight bd2, and after b6, just striking the center with e4. After d takes e4, White normally enjoys a really natural and calm position, but Black these days is playing bishop b7 or bishop a6, actually allowing White to continue further with the e-pawn to e5. But after knight e8, the position is still quite solid for Black. Normally the c file is open, and Black actually can gain some counterplay on the c file. But anyway, this is another story. Wesley decided to go for d takes c4. Is actually the most employed line by elite top grandmasters in nowadays. And White plays queen c2. The idea is, of course, quite simple. White wants to recapture the c4 pawn, Carlito's pawn, and then enjoy the center that Black has conceded by playing d takes c4. But life is not that easy for White. It's not that simple to achieve that, and Black plays a6. This humble move that is actually extremely interesting, because now actually taking on c4 is not the best move possible, because Black can solve his problems related with the c8 bishop. As you know, in the Catalan, Black's problems are normally related with this bishop on c8, since it hasn't enjoyed beautiful diagonals as this bishop on g2 does. This is the monster of the Catalan that actually put a lot of pressure on the queen side, right? So at this point, black could play b5, attacking the queen, winning a tempo, and then when this queen is retreated to c2, then bishop b7, and black has solved his problems with this bishop. Later can follow with knight bd7, rook c8, and c5, striking the center, and actually black enjoys a nice position, right? So after a6, normally white plays a4, and this is what Jeffrey did, sorry, in order to stop these b5 ideas. And now later white normally intends to recapture this c4 pawn. So black cannot put this bishop on b7, so that's why black normally plays bishop d7 in these positions in order to relocate this bishop on c6 and finally be able to create some opposition to this guy on g2, right? And at this point, Jeffrey plays a secondary line, so normally white plays queen c4 here, bishop c6, and for example, Boris Avrik in his book, he recommends bishop f4. We actually have recorded some series about the Catalan. I did myself in Spanish, so you can take a look if you want. The other move here is bishop g5, right? But again, this is another story. Rook d1, this is what Jeffrey Xiong played. This is actually a secondary line, as I'm telling you. The idea is now not to recapture the c4 pawn, but instead play knight c3 and e4, enjoy a nice center, and then later try to recapture this c4 pawn, right? So black plays bishop c6 here and knight c3. And this is actually an important moment by black now, because white is threatening to go e4 here, and let's say after knight b7, e4, now d5 is a threat, this bishop is in a lot of troubles, and white enjoys a nice position already. So that's why after knight c3, black has to take on f3, conceding the bishop pair, and after bishop f3, now black should play in an active way by playing knight c6. If you play something passive like c6, you could continue with e4, or even with this typical sacrifice by playing b3, after c takes b3, queen takes b3, sorry. White enjoys a lot of pressure on the b and c file, and b7 is actually extremely weak. So this is pretty uncomfortable for black to face. So after bishop f3, knight c6, now black is asking white some questions, because if you want to continue with e3, just in a very calm way, in order to recapture the c4 pawn later, it's not gonna be that easy, because actually black can play knight a5. That has a multi-purpose idea. First, defends the c4 pawn, defends b7, and most important, stops white from playing b3. So it's not that simple to continue with white here. You can never play e4 since knight b3 attacks the a1 rook and the d4 pawn. So after knight c6, white actually should take on c6. And after b takes c6, we actually reach this beautiful position with three Carlitos, three twins Carlitos in the position. Of course, if white manages to take one of those, for example, c4 pawn, it's going to enjoy a really comfortable position, since white's pawn structure is much better than black's, right? So still, some games were played at this point, and for example, the main move here was a5, with the idea of going rook a4 and rook takes e4. Of course, black stops this by playing rook b8 and now rook b4. So it's never so easy to recapture this c4 pawn for white. Let's say, for example, after knight b1, in order to try to recapture this pawn pretty fast, black can play actually queen d5, and now knight d2 is not possible because d4 is hanging on knight a3, and you can just take on c3. You can always strike in the center by playing c5, removing one of your Carlitos brothers. So it's never easy. And if you play e4, then rook b8, for example, knight e2, e4 is going to be hanging, so you can play queen c8, and after f3 you can strike in the center by c5, and black enjoys a nice position. So at this point, Jeffrey decided to go for bishop g5, just continue development, and later try to recapture c4 pawn. And after rook b8 by Wesley So, Xiong played e3. And still we're in the known theory. c5 was played by Wesley So, d takes c5, and queen e8. So Wesley has returned his extra pawn, but now c5 is weak. This queen is going to enjoy a nice diagonal from c6, right? And still there is some pressure on the b file, And at this point, Jeffrey decided to go for rook d4, aiming to recapture on c4. And at this point in the early game that had been played before, the game between Zugirov and Smirnov, it's not the vodka, guys, just a player that his name is Smirnov, strong grandmaster. He played rook b4 here. But at this point, Wesley decided to go for knight d7, a novelty according to my database. So bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, and now we reach an important moment. The material is balanced, but there are a lot of weak pawns, right? The point is, actually, black cannot take on c4 that easily, because not because of knight c5, this actually is much better for white, but because of knight e5. Now putting a lot of troubles to this rook. You're gonna go to d4 because of boom on f3. And if you go to e4, it's not a natural square, and after queen takes e5, even though black pawn structure is a bit worse, right? Because you have 3 islands, black pieces are extremely active. You have this knight on e5, you have the d3 square, the c3 square, the queen on c5 is extremely well placed, and you have a lot of pressure on the b file, right? So that's why after queen e7, queen takes e7, Xiong decided to go for c6 and not taking on c4. So knight e5 was played, defending c4, threatening to go knight f3. And this is again an important moment for white. You cannot parry that threat by playing king g2 because of queen c5, and then c6 is going to be extremely weak. So instead you have to go queen e4 here at this point, protecting f3, defending c6. And now queen c5 was played by Wesley So, defending c4, defending knight on e5, and also putting an eye on the c6 pawn. Just remember as well that this pawn on b2 is hanging. And from this point, the game is gonna get extremely crazy, and you guys are gonna be able to enjoy one of the best finishes I've ever witnessed in recent chess tournaments. So at this point, Jeffrey plays knight d5. This is an interesting move, because if you take with the pawn on d5, then queen takes c5, and the position is actually better for white. You're gonna enjoy a better pawn structure when these pawns are exchanged here, and d5 is extremely weak. So after knight d5, black cannot take on d5, but instead he went for the move knight d3. Actually, this knight now is attack on d5. You cannot take on c4 because the knight on d5 is hanging. So knight c7 was played here, and then the action starts, the fireworks starts, and then the beauty of chess starts here. Then Wesley So plays the beautiful move knight takes f2. Okay, this is very beautiful, but what's going on, right? This is just a piece sacrifice, and I don't see how black is gonna win the game, how black is gonna create some sort of attack. Well, of course, white has to accept the challenge by taking on f2, and now rook takes b2 check. Woo. This is another extremely important moment for white. There is only one move to continue in the game. If you play king g1, then queen h5 is actually crushing, because now h2 is attacked, so you cannot defend it that easily. You play h4, you can just play queen e2, and mate is actually impossible to stop, right? So that's why after rook b2 check, you can never go to f3 because of the same idea. Queen h5, and then after queen g4, you can just take on h2, and then black is crushing. But instead, white has to go to f1. Queen h5 anyway, you are threatening checkmate in 2 moves, or 3 moves, let's say. Queen e2, queen f2, and queen h2. And queen g4 was played after queen h2, queen f3. And we reached this position where looks like black is almost winning, right? But this queen covers all the important squares. Covers e2, f2, g2, h1. And of course, if black doesn't do anything, white is gonna just bring this knight back to the action and promote the Carlitos, right? Carlitos pawn becoming a beautiful lady. Yeah, so that's why now c3 was played. The idea is, of course, just to continue with c2. So rook c1 was played here, and now it's a really beautiful moment as well. A really humble move that actually gives black an advantage. So let's try to analyze the position. So I would love to bring a queen to d2, right? But the problem is rook d4, rook is on the d file. So e5 is actually a beautiful move that crushes white's position. Why? we have to say that this rook has to remain in the 4th rank. Why? Because if you try to bring this rook to some more active square, looking for Facundo, looking for the f7 square, etc., now e4 is actually winning on the spot, because this is deviation theme, right? You deviate this queen from the critical squares e2, f2, g2 or h1. So if you take an e2, there is mate on f2. If you go to f4, there is mate on h1. So basically this e4, this humble move, the small pawn just wins the game on the spot. So after e5, this rook has to stay in the 4th rank, right? So if you go to h4, now the problem is you have deviated this rook from the d file, and now queen d2 comes with a tempo attacking this rook on c1, and the position is so difficult for white here, guys. So rook d1 was played, attacking this queen, and then another beautiful move. Look at my hairs, guys. This never happens with me with a movie or something, but with beautiful chess positions. This is so emotional. This is so intense, guys. Rook d8 was the move here, and then when I was looking at the game, was what this guy doing? He's sacrificing everything. This Wesley So he's supposed to be a calm guy, a better version of Jan Gustafsson, just like taking pawns and then win some endgame with the tactic and the M. But no, Rook d8, sacrificing the queen, the whole queen again. A piece down and then sacrificing the queen. What's the idea? What's the idea? Well, first, we have to say that white cannot give any check to white's king, right? It's extremely well protected. The idea is after rook takes d2, rook d takes d2, there's no way to enter in the back rank here, and down there's a threat of giving checkmate in the next move on the back rank, right? So the only move is king g1, check, queen f1, and c2, winning the game on the spot, because rook f1 and c1 is coming, or the other rook to the d file, right? We have to take in account that all white pieces are extremely far from the action, right? So after rook d1, if rook e1 is played, you can just play rook d1, rook d8, and here if you play rook e1, just c2 is just winning, because you are threatening to go queen e1 followed by c1. So after rook d8, in a desperate way, knight d5 was played, and then boom, rook takes d5, boom ba boom ba boom, boom ba boom ba boom, boom ba boom ba boom. Ay ay ay, chess is so damn beautiful. The idea is after queen takes d5, still there is these problems of checkmate on f2, and therefore white cannot take on d5. Rook d4 was played, and now a really elegant way of finishing this guy is rook takes d4, e takes d4, and boom. Boom, 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 boom. Queen takes d1, guys. So he resigned here. The thing is, after queen d1, c2 is just winning on the spot in the next move. Rook b1 is coming. And then black is winning. Wow. So I think it's one of the best finishes I've ever seen in the last years, I would say. It's amazing the way Wesley finished this game. I don't know if you guys saying the same thing, but this knight f2 followed by this e5, e4, and then rook d8 and are the only options for black to win the game. It's not that there are 5 or 6 ways. If you check this game with the Jin, you will see that there's only one way for black to win the game, and this is the whole variation that I just show you. So I think it's quite impressive from Wesley So. So I recommend you to follow all the action in Chess24 of this US Championship that is finishing soon. So I have nothing more to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this game. Just take care and be good. Bye bye, guys. See you in the next video. Bye bye. Enjoy.